A seemingly perfect marriage can unravel in an instant. I know this because I've lived through it myself. For a long time, I wasn't ready to talk about it. But now, I feel the time has come to share my story. Emily and I had known each other forever, since childhood, really. We grew up as neighbors, attended the same school, and though we were in parallel classes, our friendship was inevitable. What started as a childhood bond slowly grew into something deeper, evolving into love, and eventually, into a life together. We were each other's first love, and that kind of connection felt unbreakable. She waited patiently for me to complete my military service, and when I returned, I went straight to university. Only after that did we finally decide to get married. It was our journey, and we were determined to do it on our own. We paid for our wedding ourselves, never asking for financial help from our families. We built our life with our own hands, shaping it exactly the way we wanted. Children weren't in our immediate plans. The idea of sleepless nights, diapers, and baby clothes didn't quite fit into the vision we had for ourselves. Not yet, at least. We thought that maybe by the time we turned 30, we'd revisit the idea. Until then, we focused on securing our future, diligently saving for a mortgage. But when the time came to buy a home, the bank refused our application. It was a setback, but we found a solution. My father agreed to take the mortgage in his name, and once we paid it off, we would transfer it to ours. At the time, I felt incredibly fortunate. Life was moving forward. With time, our financial situation improved. Our incomes grew, and we no longer felt the urgency to pay off the mortgage early. We bought a car, and then another. Since I worked as a freelance programmer, we made most of our larger purchases under my parents' names, keeping a low profile to avoid unnecessary financial scrutiny. Emily's name wasn't on any of it, but not because of some calculated decision. She had no family left. Her parents had died in a tragic car accident, their vehicle losing control on a slippery highway and crashing into oncoming traffic. The loss was devastating, and I mourned them just as deeply as she did. It took a long time for her to pull herself out of that darkness, but eventually, we found our way back to a sense of normalcy. Our marriage was peaceful, almost unnaturally so. We never argued, not even about the little things that most couples bicker over. If a disagreement surfaced, we always resolved it calmly. I used to joke about how eerily quiet our home was, how we never even raised our voices at each other. And then, one day, everything changed. It happened so suddenly, so inexplicably, that even now, I struggle to understand it. Emily had always done the grocery shopping alone. It was a routine we both accepted. She handled the shopping, loaded the bags into the car, and once she got home, I carried them inside. It had never been an issue before. But that day, something snapped. I could barely carry those bags to the car, she exploded as she walked through the door, her voice shaking with frustration. I thought I was going to collapse from the weight. Her words hit me like a slap, but it wasn't just what she said, it was the way she said it. Her anger, the exhaustion in her voice, the way her hands trembled as she dropped the bags onto the floor. Emily, please, calm down, I said softly, reaching out to touch her arm. But she pulled away. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears as she wiped her face angrily. If you had just called, she snapped, her voice raw with emotion. If you had just thought about me for once in your life, you would have known I needed help. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could say a word, she was already moving. Where are you going? I asked, my heart pounding. I'm tired, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm staying with Sarah for now. She paused at the doorway, her silhouette framed by the dim light of the hallway. She turned slightly, as if she wanted to say something else, something final, but the words never came. Instead, she simply looked at me one last time, then stepped out and closed the door behind her. And just like that, she was gone. I stood there in stunned silence, my mind reeling. This wasn't about groceries. It wasn't about heavy bags or a missed phone call. It was something deeper, something I hadn't seen coming. But at that moment, I wasn't ready to face it. I wasn't ready to dig into the truth hiding beneath the surface. All I knew was that in the span of a single evening, the life I thought was unshakable had fractured. And I had no idea how to put the pieces back together. I thought she would calm down, take a breath, and finally tell me what was really going on. But a month passed, and Emily never called. At first, I did everything I could. I sent texts, left voicemails, even reached out to our mutual friends. But Emily, she never picked up. By the third week, I stopped trying. The silence stretched on, heavy and unyielding, for another 2 weeks. Then, out of nowhere, Sarah showed up on my doorstep. Sarah, Emily's best friend. The one who had been her refuge these past 6 weeks. I had never particularly liked Sarah, and the feeling had always seemed mutual. But today, something about her was different. The way she leaned against my doorframe, the slow, deliberate way she stepped inside, it was impossible not to notice. "What are you doing here? Did Emily send you?" I asked, my voice wary. "No," Sarah pouted, folding her arms across her chest. "Let's just say this was my own decision." Without waiting for an invitation, she made herself comfortable on my couch, draping one leg over the armrest in a way that felt almost too intentional. "Sarah, just spit it out," I said, trying to keep my patience in check. For a moment, she hesitated. Then, as if making up her mind, she suddenly stood, crossed the space between us, and before I could react, her lips were on mine. Her hands, bold and uninvited, were already sliding lower when my body jolted back on instinct. My skin burned with shock. "Get out," I snapped, my voice shaking with barely contained anger. Sarah threw up her hands, exasperated. "What an idiot," she scoffed. "I was actually trying to save your marriage." I narrowed my eyes. "What the hell are you talking about?" She smirked, but there was no warmth in it. "Turns out Emily isn't quite the angel you thought she was." She paused for effect, watching me, gauging my reaction. After her parents passed, she needed a distraction. A little boost. So, she joined a dating site. And, well, one thing led to another. She can't even explain it herself, but now she's too ashamed to face you. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to keep my expression unreadable. Sarah tilted her head, her smirk deepening. "But hey, if you cheated too, maybe you could both start over." She winked, grinning as if this was all some twisted joke. I exhaled slowly, trying to process the sheer absurdity of what I had just heard. "And what exactly do you expect me to do with that information?" I asked, my voice low, controlled. Sarah's playful facade cracked. "Kick her out," she snapped. "Take her stuff. Let her know she's not welcome here." I met her gaze, my expression turning cold. "Not in my place," I said firmly. She scoffed. "This is her apartment too, Daniel." I shook my head. "No. This is my father's apartment. And the car she's been driving around on her little dates. That's his too." I took a step forward, gesturing toward the door. "So you can leave the keys in the mailbox. And trust me, it's better if you don't show up here again." I didn't wait for a response. I simply opened the door, and after a moment's hesitation, Sarah stormed out. The moment the door slammed shut behind her, the weight of everything settled over me. At first, I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just a strange emptiness. I had grown so used to Emily's absence that I barely noticed it anymore. But there had been moments, late at night, when I'd found myself wondering, could she really just leave? Now, I had my answer. And strangely, it made everything feel a little lighter. The divorce was quick and painless. There was nothing to divide, nothing to fight over. Emily started bombarding my phone with calls and texts, trying to reach me, but I never responded. The only thing I cared about was getting the car back. When she refused to return it, I made it clear I would report it as stolen and involve the police if necessary. That got her attention. She finally showed up, tossing the keys at me with a bitter glare. "You let your wife roam the world," she muttered under her breath. I caught the keys, looking at her one last time. And then, with a quiet finality, I said, "Honey, you left on your own." And that was it. That was how it ended. I never saw it coming, never expected my life to take this turn. But what's done is done. Life doesn't stop here.